This is Jed Distler, and welcome to The Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings. You can subscribe to The Piano Maven through my Substack page, for which I've posted a link in my episode description. Paid subscribers get free downloads at the start of each month, and you also get invitations to group Zoom chats. So do consider subscribing. I think you will really be glad that you did. A listener recently suggested that I talk about various recorded editions of Mendelssohn's Songs Without Words, and there are quite a few complete cycles of these works out there. Felix Mendelssohn published his Songs Without Words in 6 groups of 6 pieces each. There were 2 other books of Songs Without Words that had 6 pieces in each group, but those were published after Mendelssohn died. My late friend, the composer and pianist Frederick Rzewski, had a fascination with the Songs Without Words, and he felt that all 6 books, the originally published books, had an intrinsic unity to them, and he was fascinated to discover that the structure of his variations on The People United Will Never Be Defeated, which contains 6 sets of 6 variations, somehow related to Mendelssohn's 6 groups of 6 pieces game plan. And also, Frederick explained to me at one time that he saw these symbolic aspects to the structure of the works, and how these cycles of Songs Without Words often begin with a spring song, which I guess in his mind symbolized birth, and they end with a Venetian gondola song, which symbolizes death. So I guess in this way, Mendelssohn depicts an entire life cycle within a book of 6 songs. But he only uses this format in the early books of the Songs Without Words, and he somehow breaks with this structure in the later books. For example, the 6th song in the 6th book is a happy spring song in the key of E major, and I guess you could say this represents resurrection or a transition into the afterlife or reincarnation. I mean, these notions, I have to admit, are kind of speculative, but they are plausible. So let's get to talking about recordings. But before I discuss complete cycles, I want to draw your attention to a series of 9 Mendelssohn Songs Without Words that were recorded in 1930 by Ignaz Friedman, one of the great Romantic pianists. And this is amazing, big piano playing that really exemplifies bel canto, and the colors that Friedman gets out of his instrument, and the way he shapes phrases, and his most soaring legato touch. Guillermo Novaes recorded a selection of Songs Without Words for the Vox label in the 1950s. These are totally opposite to Ignaz Friedman's interpretations. They are intimately scaled and rather rarefied, and these really should be reissued. Walter Gieseking also recorded a selection of Songs Without Words in the mid-50s. I think these are a little chaste and, frankly, a bit boring, if I can be so frank. More recently, we've had lovely Songs Without Words excerpts from Andras Schiff on Decca, and there was a recent disc with Igor Levit that had a selection of Songs Without Words, which is just exquisite. I highly recommend that disc. Also, Javier Parianes recorded 15 Songs Without Words for a recent Mendelssohn disc on Harmonia Mundi. And these are terrific. They showcase this pianist's full-bodied sonority and his wide dynamic range and wonderful palette of colors. This is a great disc. Of course, one would have to mention notable single versions of Songs Without Words. You know, everybody used to play the spring song. And then there's that dazzling Rachmaninoff recording of the spinning song where he adds an introductory vamp at the beginning. That's really a fantastic recording. There's also the Shepherd's Complaint, which used to pop up a lot as an encore. There's a famous Vladimir Horowitz recording about that. What is the Shepherd's Complaint? You never take me anywhere. You never go anywhere. You never do this. You never do that. That's like the Shepherd's Kvetch. I think complaint means something completely different. Anyway, let's talk about complete songs without words cycles. The first complete edition, I believe, was made in 1952 and 1953 for the Westminster label, featuring the French pianist Jeanette Doyen. And I would love to see Universal Classics issue this because they control the Westminster catalog. She plays with great sensitivity and textural transparency, with melodies and accompaniments and perfect balance. And you can find these recordings on YouTube. I've posted a link in the episode description. A couple of years later, Anya Dorfman recorded the complete songs without words for RCA Victor. This also is in mono. These are elegant, old-school kind of readings, and the sound is a bit on the dry side, but still decent enough. And these came out in the Sony BMG box set of Anya Dorfman's complete RCA Victor recordings, which I wrote the notes for. And you can also get excellent transfers by Mark Oberthorn, affected from mint copies of the LPs. And these are available from Andrew Rose's Pristine Audio label. One of the first stereo sets of the complete songs without words came from the French pianist Rina Kyriakou. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. This was on the Vox label. These are lovingly cultivated performances. And the sound is a little dry, and sometimes you get some fuzziness on high notes that I remembered from my old LP pressings, but maybe it's a master tape defect because I hear it on the CDs. But I like this set a lot. Kyriakou favors leisurely tempos, and she spins out legato lines with very subtle shadings that even make, the famous pieces like the Spring Song and the Hunting Song sound really fresh. And she brings wonderful timbral differentiation between melodies and accompaniments in many of the pieces, too. I have always liked the Songs Without Words cycle by Ilse von Alpenheim, recorded for Philips. These are really enjoyable and sensitive performances, and there's a real nice ebb and flow to the legato phrasing. It always holds my attention. And similar qualities, I think, distinguish Livia Rev's Songs Without Words cycle for Hyperion, and this is one you should check out as well. But if you want extra scintillation and more dynamic range, there's a really terrific Songs Without Words cycle by the Israeli pianist Daniel Adni. I think this was recorded in 1973, somewhere around there. And it was for EMI, and EMI brought these out very briefly as a twofer, meaning 2 CDs for the price of one. It's been out of print on physical disc for some time, but I would really love to see it reissued. He also did a very fine cycle of the Grieg lyric pieces for EMI that was on a twofer reissue, by the way. There are several wonderful Mendelssohn Songs Without Words cycles that are part of larger cycles that encompass Mendelssohn's complete solo piano works. I don't know if the Songs Without Words groups from these cycles were compiled as standalone Songs Without Words releases, but maybe they should be. I'm talking about the cycles by Benjamin Frith on Naxos, Howard Shelley on Hyperion, and possibly best of all of these is the one with Roberto Proceda on Decca. Now, Roberto is a great friend of mine, so I'm admittedly prejudiced, but I love his songs without words. I mean, I love all of his Mendelssohn, but his songs without words are very distinctive because his tempos are all spot on. His attention to dynamics and articulation bring a kind of period performance sensibility to the modern concert grand, but without any mannerisms or exaggerations. This is really, really world-class playing. One excellent cycle of songs without words that may not be so easy to source on physical CD, but you can find it as a download or by streaming, comes from another Israeli pianist, Daniel Gortler, and he really plays beautifully. He has a warm and singing sonority, he's a tasteful musician, and his finger work has great fluency and definition. And there's some real favorites of mine in this cycle. I'm thinking of the E-flat major piece, Opus 30, number 1. What gorgeous legato control and a beautifully sonorous organ-like accompaniment in the left hand. And that F-sharp minor piece, Opus 19, number 5, has gorgeous swirling passage work. It's a terrific cycle. I reviewed this for Classics Today back in 2009, and I'm really glad that I've held on to this cycle. There's an interesting cycle from the pianist Michael Korstic on the CPO label. Sometimes he can be a little heavy-handed, and sometimes he can be overly aggressive and muscular. I'm thinking like the E-flat major piece, Opus 53, number 2. But he is less cautious than most modern pianists in the spinning song. You know, he takes something not quite at the Rachmaninoff tempo, but it does have a real roguish brio to it that I really like. I enjoy dipping into this cycle every now and then. I can't say it's my absolute favorite, but the best parts of it really intrigued me, so I'm happy to have it here. I also should talk about Peter Donahoe's complete Songs Without Words, which are part of an ongoing Mendelssohn cycle for Chandos, I believe. In any event, volumes 1 and 2 are available on separate releases, and I reviewed the second volume for Gramophone a few years ago. Now, Peter Donahoe does not play the pieces in sequence in terms of opus number, but he mixes and matches the pieces between opus numbers for maximum contrast of mood and tempo and tonality. And I'm looking at my review now, and I wrote that Peter Donahoe in these works has a straightforward temperament and a respect for the text that emphasizes truth over surface charm. Yeah, well, okay, I guess that's sort of true. Now, there is a fascinating document that has not been officially released, but it's a performance that you should know about. I think it was in 2008 when Frederic Rzewski played the entire cycle of the first 6 Songs Without Words books in concert. He generally takes fast tempos, and there's an intensity and a feeling of a long arc throughout the performance. And he gave me a copy from the concert. I can't remember where the concert took place, but I've had this for a long time, and I've shared it with friends of mine. I would love to see this made available on an official release. Maybe the family can authorize its release, but, we should try to figure that out. However, the pianist Bobby Mitchell, who, like me, was a great friend of Frederic Rzewski, was encouraged by his mentor to take up the Songs Without Words. And for his recent recording on the Gallo label, Bobby Mitchell reorders the 36 pieces of the first 6 books, much in the same way that Peter Donahoe reordered the 8 books. And Bobby Mitchell's ordering of the 6 published books creates much more of a large scale and perhaps more unified trajectory. And like Frederick, his tempos tend to be on the brisk side, but there's a freedom and flexibility and a sense of dynamism that elevates this music from the intimate salon to more of a public arena. And I'd like to give a heads up for several complete Mendelssohn Songs Without Words cycles that are scheduled for release, and you can sample them by going to prestomusic.com. One is with the pianist Jacopo Salvatori from the company On Classical. This is a download-only release. And then there's another by Angelo Martino on the Haladon label, and that's another digital release. So keep your eyes out for these two. I have not heard them yet. However, for an admittedly mainstream recommendation, which is to say safe recommendation, and I mean safe in a good way. Also, I'm recommending this because these recordings have had a long-standing critical consensus as a reference version, and I think you know where I'm going with this. I'm talking about the recordings that Daniel Barenboim made for Deutsche Grammophon in 1973. His interpretations have a naturalness to them in every respect. Tempos, I think, are governed by musical character rather than athletic considerations. His sound is full-bodied and always singing, and he really conveys affinity and a genuine love for this repertoire. Maybe it's hyperbolic for me to claim that Daniel Barenboim never made a better piano recording than in these Mendelssohn Songs Without Words, or maybe it is his best piano recording. I'm definitely opening up a can of worms here, but I'd be curious to know what you think is the best integral Mendelssohn Songs Without Words cycle on disc. I'm always learning from Piano Maven subscribers about recordings that I either didn't know about or recordings I've forgotten about. Your feedback always keeps me honest, so don't hesitate to chime in. This is Jed Disler, and you've been listening to The Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings, and I look forward to being with you for our next episode. Take good care.